Good day, students. I will be your biology teacher for today, and the topic is forest. Lesson objectives. By the end of today's lesson, you will be able to list the characteristics of forest, categorize the strata in a rainforest, describe the distribution of organisms in a forest, explain the adaptation of plants and animals in a rainforest. Forest. A forest is a plant community in which tree species are dominant. There are different kinds of forest whose distribution is determined mainly by climate. For example, rainfall and temperature, but sometimes by elevation, soil factors, and the activities of man, such as farming, lumbering, cutting of firewood, bush burning, road construction, and building construction. Forests used to cover most of southern Nigeria, but the area covered by forest has been reduced by human activity. The rainforest is the major type of forest in Nigeria. The rainforest is the major type of forest in Nigeria. Let's look at the characteristics. Characteristics of the tropical rainforest. 1. The forest is rich in epiphytes and climbers. Epiphytes are those plants that twist around other plants, and climbers are those animals that you see them jumping from one tree to another. For example, monkeys. 2. The interior of the forest has high humidity, low light intensity, and damp floor, which means the interior of that forest, the relative humidity is very high, but with low light intensity. 3. Tall trees with canopy strata. Most of the trees there, they are tall trees. They form canopy. Their leaves are broad to form canopy. 4. Trees are mesophytes with broad leaves. Trees are mesophytes, which means they are those plants that can tolerate, that cope with the moderate rainfall and temperature. 5. Leaves of all trees have long drip tips to facilitate dripping off of water. Then 6. The vegetation has a pattern of arrangement in stories or layers. When you are looking at the forest, the kind of the arrangement there is just like layers or stories, one layer after the other. 7. The forest floor is usually open with little vegetation. Then 8. There is usually a large amount of leaf litter. When you look at the floor of the forest, it's filled with leaf litters. And 9. Rainfall is usually very high. When there's going to be rainfall, it's very high. Now, let's look at the strata in a rainforest. The plants in a forest may be classified into 5 stories or layers, which are briefly described as follows. 1. The emergent layer. 2. The upper layer. 3. The middle layer. 4. The lower layer. And 5. The ground layer of forest floor. Now let's look at them one after the other. The emergent layer, which is number 1. Emergent layer. This is the topmost layer or story. The topmost layer or story made up of the tallest trees in the forest. It is made up of the tallest trees in the forest, and their height is over 40 meters tall. Over 40 meters tall. That is their height, called emergence. They are called emergence. The crowns of the emergence do not normally touch one another. That is the only thing that we see there. The crown of the emergent do not normally touch one another. We shall be right back. You are welcome back. 2. The upper layer. This is the second story or layer and is made up of tall trees between 20 meter and 40 meter tall. Their crowns touch, forming a continuous canopy below the emergent. You see their crown, touching the emergent canopy, and their own height is not as tall as that of the emergence. Their own height is between 20 meter and 40 meter tall. 3. The middle layer. The third layer is made up of small trees less than 20 meter tall, which also form a continuous canopy below the second or upper story. 4. The lower layer. Below the third layer of trees is the shrub layer. You see them? They are shrub layer. Short trees, they are shrub layer. Then the 5th one is the ground of forest floor. That is the floor of the forest. The ground layer consists of shade tolerant plants. Including mosses and ferns. You see mosses and ferns there. Those are the one that you see in the ground layer. Now let's look at the distribution of plants and animals in the rainforest. Plants such as mahogany, mango trees, coconut trees, oil palm trees, orchids, ferns, and herbs. Animals, there are birds, squirrels, snakes, toads, and snails. You see these different kinds of these plants and animals in the forest. Adaptive features of tropical rainforest organisms. Adaptive features of tropical rainforest organisms. Let's look at the plants first. 1. Trees have broad leaves. Trees that are found there, they have broad leaves to increase rates of transpiration or gaseous exchange of leaves. Trees have broad leaves to increase rate of transpiration or gaseous exchange of leaves, pointed to increases exposure to sunlight. To increase exposure to sunlight. 2. Leaves have pointed draw out tips. Leaves have pointed draw out tips for easy dripping of water or to prevent growth of fungi or algal underneath. 3. Trees have thin bark. Their bark is very tiny. So trees there have thin bark to facilitate transpiration. And for breathing or for gaseous exchange. That is why you see them having that one there. 4. Plants with twiny stems for climbing up to source of light. You see the plants that are called epiphytes, you see them have twiny stems so that it can enable them to climb up to source of light. Then 5. Presence of hydatodes. There is presence of hydatodes for glutations and so on. Presence of hydatodes for glutations and so on. Take a look at the below diagram showing the tropical rainforest. You can see how the trees there are arranged. You can see the forest floor. You can see the shade. That is temperate rainforest. Although you have scattered pockets of temperate rainforest, they are found from Mount Vena. So that is the typical picture of the tropical rainforest. We shall be back. Welcome back. Animals. These include animals with grappling pads, e.g. tree frogs. Tree frogs, they have grappling pads that enable them to stay on the tree. Animals like snakes have grappling scales. They have grappling scales. See them with that scales, they can crawl on the trees, they can stay on the tree, they can, that is the adaptive features to stay in the forest. Animals such as birds, they have the ability to fly from one place to another. They can even leave the forest and fly to another region. Let us look into two animals vividly. Monkeys. Monkeys have long tail, which is used for balancing. Monkeys have long tail, which is used for balancing. Their both hind limbs and fore limbs are well developed. Their both hind limbs and fore limbs are well developed. The hind limbs are used for takeoff. The hind limbs are used for takeoff, and the fore limbs are used for landing. The fore limbs are used for landing. They also have digits. They have digits which are elongated and opposable. Elongated and opposable for efficient grasping of the branches of the trees. They have digits, well elongated and opposable for efficient grasping of the branches of the trees. The chest is well developed. That is an adaptation for landing as well. Millipedes. The body is covered with hard calcareous exoskeleton, which is protective in nature. The body is covered with hard calcareous exoskeleton, which is protective in nature, and it is for conservation of water. It is used for conservation of water. There are many walking legs in millipedes, 2 pairs per segment for locomotion. 2 pairs per segment for locomotion. A pair of sensory antenna. They have a pair of sensory antenna, which is used for finding its way. Through its antenna, it can find its way. The mouth parts of millipedes are adapted for herbivorous feeding. The mouth parts of millipedes are adapted for herbivorous feeding. Example of food chain existing in the forest habitat. This is just a simple chart, a simple food chain existing in the forest. Palm fruits, squirrel, scale, birds. You can see the snake. If the snake die and the bird feed on them, snake feed on squirrel, then squirrel feed on palm fruits. Now, can we evaluate ourselves a bit? Students, how would you describe the tropical rainforest? How would you describe the tropical rainforest? 2. How will you list the characteristics of the rainforest? How will you list the characteristics of the rainforest? 3. Can you categorize the strata in the rainforest? Can you categorize the strata in the rainforest? Thank you.